Welcome to another episode of The Real Source. Today on the show, we have a new guest called Alex James. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Hi.
The first question is, could you give us a little insight into your background as a founder of bereavement.co.uk, which is one of the oldest bereavement support sites on the internet?
Yeah, it is actually, and it started years ago. I mean, and I can't remember what year, but it was when not everybody had a home computer, and my husband bought one home, and at that time I was doing a lot of support work, and I think I was doing some psychology courses and different things, and I got on there, and you had that dial-up tone. You guys are probably, I don't know how
Yeah,
young you are,
I remember it.
yeah. And I found MSN just by chance, and there was a woman on there from America, and it was like staggering to me because the only way that you could talk to anybody abroad in those days was if you made a long distance call. So to be able to chat, by writing in an MSN chat room to somebody in America was amazing. And this woman's son had killed himself, and she was setting up what she was telling me, an MSN chat room for people who had had children that had died. And I told her a little bit about myself, and she said, would you be our online counsellor? So I started doing it then, and her site just grew, and it got too big for me. I couldn't manage, so I started doing the email support. So she would then give people my email address and they would write to me. And in those days, there weren't all the restrictions and things that you have to do today. So I was just out there, and it grew and grew. So 365 days a year, sometimes a couple of hours a day, I'd be answering emails from all over the world, people with similar problems, all to do with death, dying, bereavement, different kinds of losses. And so I decided then that I would go around the UK looking at services that were available here, because I thought there's a theme here. People aren't talking. And I've never intended, not in a month of Sundays, to become a bereavement counsellor. It just was not on my agenda, no. But I just kind of, and I was going around saying, sorry.
It just goes to show how much it was needed if it really took off that quickly as well.
Well, it did. And over the next years, I was working in all different organisations. So there was a Road Victims Trust, which was sudden death. I was working with people who had family members murdered. There was all sorts of things that I was doing. And the same sorts of stories were coming through. And some of them were what people were saying. That I hadn't heard it before. There was one guy who had written to me, and he said he wanted some help for his wife. They didn't dare go to the doctor because all she was doing was sitting by her son's grave, and in the winter she was putting blankets on it. And he wanted to know, is this normal? And funnily enough, it is, because I had lots of letters from similar sort of circumstances where people were saying, I wished I'd never had my loved one buried. I go to the grave. I want to keep them safe, all sorts of stuff like that. And so I started writing the book, which was, I think, way ahead of its time because it has all that kind of stuff in it. And then from that, I got called from the hospice and asked if I would help them set up a service which was funded by Children in Need for children whose parents were terminally ill. And I think they got more than they bargained for, actually, because I am a rule breaker. I know
that's nice. That's good.
I'm not, I'm an innovator, I'm a creator, and I love people. My passion is not for stats or admin. So I fell down badly there. But I did create this service, and the service was based on children being able to talk to each other, not being monitored in the same sorts of way that perhaps counselling would, and just activating groups of people that could come together in a more natural way. And what I found by that was some people would come and they'd just sleep. The parents, they'd been bereaved, or they were just very tired from looking after somebody who was poorly, and they would just find a corner and go to sleep in a chair because they felt confident that their children were being cared for in the group. Very different work.
Comfortable space for them to be.
But as I say, I'm not a stats person. I moved on from that then to looking at how interviewers interviewed people on sensitive issues. And I felt there has to be something out there to train journalists. So I started doing that. And I was already the website is not a charity. I've been funding it myself for 30 or 28 years, I think.
Right.
So how I fund it is by doing these training courses. So I've trained all
Yeah.
sorts of people in critical incident, but it's all human aspects. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
talk about, it's all very well having policies and procedures, but how do we talk to people who are in crisis, or they are troubled, or they are deeply upset and behaving in an abnormal way. And I'm really sorry about my dog.
All right.
I have the same issue.
Yeah. So basically, it's my whole world of what I'm doing is all about looking after people, getting them to communicate their feelings so that they can say, actually, I am normal. And I say, and this is my phrase, a normal reaction to abnormal circumstances.
Yeah, of course. I really like that. I think it's
Great
nice. I think it shows that you it shows, because I'm the same. I'm not very good with paperwork and logging things, and I'd rather put that extra time into people, and that shows you're talking truly from your heart then as well.
I think so, yeah. I don't know because I'm in my 60s now, so I'm kind of a different age, I think. But when I was a kid, I remember being about 12, and at 12, because I didn't have my mum, if I had a problem, I'd go around the corner to Auntie whatever her name was, and you'd go in. The back door was always open, and for some reason, I think she must have been glued to a chair with a cup of tea, because she'd always be there. And you'd sit at the table, and she'd say, "Tell me about it, love." And you'd sit there, and I'm from the Midlands, like you, so I don't know if I always thought that was a Midland thing, but I don't now. I think it's common if people are allowed to do it. And you see a little glimpse of that. If there's a crisis, you see how people pull together and they get this feeling of fitting in. And I think we're kind of losing that, aren't we, as a society, because we're very isolated, and you've got to be seen to be doing okay no matter how you're feeling. And so that's what I'm about now. So there you go. I've kind of potted myself up. I
think people used to listen more rather than kind of tell you what to do and judge you. And my nan was kind of in her 90s, and I could speak to all the family and they'd just look at me like I was crazy. But then I could go and sit with nan and instantly say what I'm going to say, and she'd just sit there calmly and just listen until while I waffled on, and then try and feed me up to death.
I think that, I think we've forgotten. Somewhere there's a link. We've forgotten how to be human. You see families out together, or you used to see them out together before this, but all on their phones. There isn't that same, I don't think there's that same connection to family, or even to your neighbours. People can next door to people forever.
Yeah. I don't know whether it's society and the fact we're so busy now. Every single family member's working, and it's all chase money, bills. So I'm not sure whether it's kind of been taken away from it, some of it.
I think it's appearances. I think we're all kind of wanting to be okay. It's not, we've had the stigma, haven't we, about mental illness, and now it's opened up, and people are starting to say, actually, I've got a mental illness, or I suffer with anxiety, and I want people to recognise that these are human things. They're not necessarily illnesses. And if we just talk a bit more, you might just find out that the person you thought was doing really okay actually is also feeling like you, just like you, scared.
Yeah, nice. The kind of question 2 was leading to that, but I think I might just leave it. I might leave it to flow today instead of just going like question 1, question 2, question 3. Question 2 was more about, like, I was going to say, bereavement is something we all have to face in life, but for a lot of us, it's very difficult to express and even understand how we're feeling. How does it help to be open about our feelings, and where and how can people start with this process in a way? I know that's difficult to answer because there's many ways, but what would you advise?
I always say, just, recognise that your journey is your own, you're unique, and how you felt about the person that died and that bond and relationship you had is unique to you. It's whatever you brought to that relationship. So therefore your feelings can't be exactly the same as somebody else. And I think to recognize that, and to talk about them, and to maybe have things around that make other people talk about them, because I think that's the awkwardness, isn't it? You know, we don't perhaps go into someone's house and say, oh, is that a picture of John? You know, kind of think, oh God, they've got a picture of John out. How am I going to? Let's avoid it. Or John's shoes are still by the door. What I tell you what, I'll kick those to the side, and when I leave, I'll say, why don't you put those away? But actually, those things could be left out so that we do talk about them. And I think my feeling is, if you've really loved somebody, if somebody is a part of your life, when they've gone, just because their physical presence isn't there, it doesn't mean that they have gone entirely. While you think about them, and while they're important to you, and if you can talk about them, you become more open to remembering things about them, and your life becomes richer, because other people will say, oh, I remember John doing that. I remember Barbara saying that. And it kind of keeps them with us, and the richness of the life they left behind.
Of course. And those memories are amazing sometimes to just go and reminisce on. So it's important to talk.
It's always difficult, you know. I think I get a lot of letters from family who say, I don't want to, particularly younger people, I don't want to mention my dad because my mum seems like she's doing okay. And then mum will say, don't want to cry in front of the kids, because if I cry in front of the kids, they're going to be upset, you know. And it's just a block, when actually, if they just were brave enough to I say, have a book out in your house, and just every day write down how you're feeling. Do it at work as well. How are you feeling today? And then people can just look at it and say, oh, there's somebody in here who feels as crap as I do today. I'm going to write, I feel like that too. And then at the end of the day, people leave or whatever, write how you're feeling. And you can kind of communicate safely that way, because you don't even have to identify who wrote it in work.
It's almost letting go of some of those feelings, in a sense. I don't mean letting them go fully, but just expressing and then being able to move forward.
Yeah, learning how to communicate what you're really feeling, and being brave enough to own it. And for the people that want to help the bereaved, I think what I say is bear to listen and bear to be present. You actually don't have to say anything. And if you don't know what to say, you can say, I don't know what to say. I just don't know what to say.
It's funny, because someone last night said to me that because we were talking about guys and how they've sort of got this stigma of they've got to be strong, never show their emotions, and she said to me, people don't realise that when people are themselves and they show their true feelings, that most people, when they hear that, all they do is respect you for it. They don't go down the road of judging, they just respect you for it. So I think we should all be a bit more open in our ways.
And of course you can't know, can you, when you just share something little about yourself, you can't know whether that really is something big for somebody else, and whether it really has helped them. You know, just somebody saying something like, I'm feeling really crap today and I can't get this done, and you think, actually, I can't do that either. You know, if you could just be brave enough to connect, that's fabulous. And that's the feeling, I think, that I noticed that comes out. You know, when Grenfell happened and everybody raced down to Grenfell with water, and I think, and I wanted to be out there saying, okay, let's, as a human race, as a human person, let's look at why they're doing this. And it isn't necessarily about helping. It's about, we feed on that feeling of feeling valued and wanted, and we get an enrichment in ourselves when somebody says, thank you so much, that really helped me. It's a lift. It's like giving a present, isn't it? You know, you get that joy.
Like, and I think natural instinct.
And I think we need to get more of that going. We need to get more of that, because it's what helps people to unite and to work together and make things better.
Yeah,
I'm up for that. I'm with you on that 100%. That's amazing.
Yeah. Go on, your next question.
But that was amazing. I really, really, really feel and hear all of that. It's quality. It's nice to hear someone put it into words, because we always get people say, like, you know, it's good to do this, it's good to do that, but that felt really heartfelt. So I'm hearing that. I might go get a tissue.
It was the feeling, because I started. I've got to tell you this story, right? I started it isn't a charity, because charity involves money. And I felt the country is fed up of being asked for money. And also that's very unequal, because there are some families that just haven't got the money to give, and so they don't feel that they can contribute. So I thought, right, okay, I've got all these terminally ill people that I met through the hospice, who most of them had a wish that they wanted to have fulfilled. And I came up with the idea of having this buckets. Unfortunately, I called it a charity, where I'd have a bucket list bank, and people could just go to the bank and they put in their skill. So you might put in radio presenter, storyteller, hairdresser, artist. And then when somebody's dying in that area, say it's, I don't know, let's say it's Birmingham. I look in Birmingham in my bucket list bank and see, I've got an artist here, and this lady wants a picture painting before she dies. So I phone them up and say, can I call in your skill?
Awesome.
And then they get the great feeling from doing something. Or if it's a wedding, I just go through the whole of Solihull and say, right, we've got this wedding going on in the hospice there. Who can help? Who's in my bank? And then they all just go along and do it. Sounds great. You got to have a board of trustees. You've got to be registered. You've got to have letters. I mean, my God, by the time I'd done everything they wanted, all the people I were trying to help would be dead. I mean, you know,
tiring, isn't it?
So you just do things quietly. And I think that's the other problem. We have tied ourselves up with so much red tape, so many don'ts, you know, don't talk to strangers. I mean, 99% of the world, I think, is good. There's that percentage, but teach your kids to talk to strangers. It's how they learn to communicate. You know, don't be so frightened of everybody.
For me, it's 99% of the media is quite negative, so it kind of puts everyone gets that mindset the last 20 years in a way.
Well, I'm saying it's not true. I'm saying 99% of the people I meet, even some of the top celebrities, you talk to them the right way, they want to help. They want to be involved. People do want to do good stuff. But it's this element of, you mustn't do that. It's far too dangerous. You know, don't hug a child. You know, I hug children, because if there's other adults present, I figure I'd rather, if a child wants a hug from me. And, you know, and I just think, what are we doing? What are we doing? We're stopping ourselves from being human. We're making ourselves distant and isolated, and everybody's out to get you. Everybody's out to nick from you and hurt you and harm your kids and steal from you. So be very careful. And actually, I'm saying, no, don't stop that. Think about things like Grenfell and how you were open to people helping, and how keep that good feeling going.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah. That's not even an answer to your question.
No, it was. It was perfect.
It was an off topic. We like the off topics. They're good.
The next question is going to have a little bit more. I don't want to say the word serious, because I don't really like to put that label on it, but I'll go ahead with it anyway. We hear a lot about stress, panic, and even suicide. Is on the increase in a big way, especially the last 12 months with the so-called pandemic, and especially what seems to be with young men a lot more. What have you noticed happen in regards to COVID and people's mental health, and what can people actually do to better cope with this situation? Also, what's your thoughts of the increase of young men with regards to committing suicide, and also the lack of coverage by mainstream media on everything we've kind of just mentioned?
I think, first of all, I have to tell you, we can't use the word commit anymore, because it's not a crime. So we just say take their own lives or suicide. So I can't use that word. I think our expectations, and it's going back again to what I said to you earlier, the expectation is that we're doing well by what we perceive are other people's standards. We're losing ourselves, we're losing, and perhaps we haven't got, like you had your gran, the people around us that say, go on kid, you're doing well, you're all right, I'm here. That there seems to be this isolation going on. And I think that, coupled with not being able to talk frankly about how we feel, like it's not okay to say I'm not okay, when actually it is okay. I think, and then anxiety. I also think if somebody says, oh, anxiety, a lot of people will hook into it that perhaps they haven't got severe anxiety. They're experiencing what is a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. And we need to get this in order. And I think one of the things that's happened with 2020 is there's this uncertainty for everyone. It's feeling really unsafe, and that coupled with not having family maybe close to support you, and not having close relationships where you can share your uncertainties, it builds in you. And so I think it's I'm being distracted by my dog. So it's really important to talk to other people about how you're feeling, to find it's one person you can trust to talk about it. And I think this is being, mental health issues are being really almost exploited. And I'm frightened that people who haven't got mental health issues will be labelled as being mentally ill, simply because they're having what is a normal reaction to this uncertain, abnormal, awful time. And of course, if you haven't got a job, and if you have got a huge mortgage, and if you've got all these other issues going on, and I think one of the things that I've noticed and had a lot of emails about is breakdown in relationships, because people have been so intensely put together during COVID, and and everybody's got their own issues. So I think with all of that going on, well, are you surprised that people are really in a place of uncertainty and troubled? And they need someone to talk about it.
Of course,
that's the important thing, to talk.
I suppose it gets scary for some couples being in that close relationship, no work outlet, nowhere to kind of go differently or talk to different people. And I suppose some people have that fear of being open even with their partner in case it causes any kind of distance between one another also,
That's why I'm saying it's time to talk. It's really time to, and if you can't talk, journal, write it down. Write it down, keep a journal. Journal keeping can be really, even if you're on your own, it can be really, really useful, because you can look back and see that you've made a little bit of progress, diary a day. And if you are going through something like that, look for help. The Samaritans are there. They're great listeners. There are lots of organisations in the UK and all over the world where there are chat rooms and places that you can share your story and get support, and take it. If people offer you support, don't be afraid to say thank you and take it. Don't feel that it's, there was this stigma around food banks. I think there's going to be a huge demand on food banks this year. And I think, there's no shame in taking help if you need it, because, and if you've got it, pay it forward. If you're in a good place, please pay it forward, because I always think there's a thin line for all of us between where we could be and where we're at. So it's really important that we look after other people as well at the moment.
Yeah, I noticed on Facebook a lot of people, there was kind of a feed going around, and there was a lot of people who obviously knew they were in a good circumstance, and they were kind of putting the feed out saying, look, if you're struggling for food, give me a call. If you're embarrassed to call me, just put a letter through my door. I'll quite happily go out, get you a bag of shopping. I'll drop it on your doorstep, and we don't need to discuss it. We'll just carry on with days, but please, please, please don't struggle. And I found that quite a bit like you mentioned with Grenfell in a sense, kind of that community spirit again. So I did see it quite a lot this year, alongside all the other kind of stressful situations.
I think it would be really helpful if the big stores could do something like, if people could just say at the end of their shop, right, I'll donate £5 to the store. And then people who are struggling could just go in and pick up the voucher. If the shop just said to them, how many kids have you got? I've got 4. Okay, here's a £100 voucher. Go and do your shopping. And they just pay by voucher like everybody else.
There's a lot of regulation, isn't there, even around the out-of-date stuff? That's the problem.
Bang my head on the wall.
There's a great I know a good friend who does feeds the homeless in Birmingham, and you'd go to somewhere like well, I'm not going to mention names, but you go to a bakery store, and they'd have trays and trays of stuff that was freshly baked that morning, but because it's not the next day, they had to throw it in the bin, and they couldn't give it you. They're like, no, we want to give it you. They were literally wanting to hand it you, but they
I
could
think
not.
I said, I'm really hungry. Can I take it?
Yeah, can I take it for myself? But the problem is, then you're literally liable if you fed a homeless person and they got sick, and because of the red tape again. So they need to cut some of this.
They've got more chance of getting sick by eating out of an old bin, do you know?
Yeah.
Compared to...
Yeah.
Apart from it's fear, isn't it?
It's kind of red tape. It's pointless. I think most of it. Mind you, Rich, some of this food we've been learning about, I'm not sure whether they'd be better off eating out of the bin.
No, that's true. That's true. We've learned a hell of a lot, haven't we? Jeez.
Regards to what I mentioned about, it seems from what I'm hearing, like suicide has gone up in men, especially between like the ages of 18 and 30, which is quite astonishing to me because, such young hearts, young minds. Do you think this all comes back to the stigma of men have got to be strong and men can't talk about their feelings?
Yeah, and we're still doing it. And I want you to, if you're watching this, stop it. Stop doing that. Stop telling children, look after your mum. Stop telling young men, you're the man in the house. Stop putting pressure. Just be a person. And I think if you're a person who is contemplating that this is the end, don't do it. I think, I've experienced that moment of despair, and I think you'd be really surprised how many people have thought, I'm going to kill myself, because they cannot in that moment. And it is fleeting. I'll guarantee it's fleeting. I know it is. It might last for a day or a couple of days. It comes from nowhere, where you suddenly think, this is a wall. I can't get around it. I can't get through it. I can't go over it. I'm going to end it because I really can't face anymore. If you can just stop yourself from thinking like that, and just reflect on something that has happened in the past that's been good, and just try to change your mindset. I'm putting this out as a plea to somebody that is in that place, because I know that place, and it's a horrible place. And I think, like I said to you, there are a lot more people out there who have contemplated doing that because they're in this absolute place of despair, and then they've not done it and found themselves in a better place. But there is such a shame to it. Be ashamed if you thought of taking your life. Well, I'm sorry, but I think sometimes you can be in such despair that, even something as what we may say trivial, a broken relationship, somebody just can't see that they can be without that person. And they think, I'll take my life. Or, in my case, it was bullying. I was 16. And I overdosed, and very nearly died. But for me, it was a case of I couldn't see how I could get around that. I just couldn't see a way forward in that. And I think if you've ever been in that situation and you understand it, then if you think somebody else is going through it, don't be ashamed to tell them, I've been there and you can survive this. There are always ways, and there is always help. There is always somebody that will hold your hand through it. And things are never, ever, ever, even though you're probably watching this and saying, well, what do you know? I do know, believe me, I do know. And I think even though you're in that place and you think, this is it for me, I can't see a way forward, there is always, always help. I promise you, there is always something that can be done before you do that.
And that would be kind of, even if you haven't got family, again, kind of things like your bereavement.co, and then charities.
There are charities that I think there is a charity that supports family of suicides. I don't know which ones support people who are suicidal, but I do know that the Samaritans are really, if you're feeling like that, talk to the Samaritans. I can't personally get involved with people that are writing letters of suicide, but for the red tape reasons. I'd be more likely to come around your house and say, come on, no. Red tape stops us all from doing everything these days. But I think, like I say, that once I start talking about things like that, the amount of people who say to me, I've got you. I've been in that place when in the middle of the night where you just can't see. Have you ever had a feeling like that where you just can't see? the way around it. Not necessarily suicide, but have you ever been that upset that you just can't see that it's ever going to end?
I think everyone has.
Yeah.
I had it when I was over here, when I closed my business down, and I just didn't find a way out, and like here, and I was like, what am I doing in this country? And it's just it was all collapsing around me. I went into deep depression for a long time, but I got out of it.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, to recognise that you're not insignificant. You are so important. You've got a life. My dad used to say, life's a party, and the chance of an invite is millions and millions to one. So you've got your golden ticket already. Just do something with it. Don't ever think that you're so worthless or unwanted that you need to do that.
It's almost like people feel like they've got no purpose left, in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah,
so you've got to get out.
Nobody wants them, nobody loves them, nobody cares, there's no help, they can't survive it, they're not going to be able to manage. So
I've had a couple of good friends who well, not good friends, but I know them well, who've been down that road, and when you look from the outside in, it was almost like they felt like they were doing their family a favour, in a sense, because they felt like a burden, because they were either ill or they were getting into trouble all the time, or there was lots of different reasons. So in that sense, sometimes I used to look at it like it wasn't, because a lot of people say it's selfish also, and I used to look at it in the sense of it's kind of selfless. They believe it's selfless, in a sense. So,
I think you're right. Yeah. It is that I won't be a burden to anybody anymore, and they'll be glad when I'm gone. And actually, they're not. And the burden on the loved ones left behind is huge.
Yeah,
because they all say the same thing to me. If only they had talked to us. If only they had told us, we would have, we could have, and we should have. And those are the three things that get said. So please, if you're thinking of anything like that, talk to your family. Talk to someone. Even if it's someone in the street,
We'll put a link for the Samaritans on this as well.
Please do.
Yeah,
please
and
do. They do
yours,
fantastic work.
we'll put a few links on this.
There's Cruise Bereavement Care as well. They're very good. And Child Bereavement UK. They have organisations all across the country. I mean, my site now is more of a signposting service. I say, I'm going more towards this.
Maybe you could send us some links, good links over, and we'll put them below this video so people can have a good look.
I will do.
There will be people who kind of watch this eventually, when we grow, and they go back and go, oh, I need to watch that, and perhaps they can find some kind of answers for themselves.
Give them a good, especially these next 12 months.
Yeah, I think it's going to be different, isn't it? Very different. And I think we've all got a loss in a way, because what we perceived, and I say this too, tomorrow actually really doesn't exist for any of us. We just think it does. And we make these plans and we own them. And then we get really cross when things don't work out. When actually, if we look at it realistically, it was never there anyway, because tomorrow doesn't exist. So we really should live more in the moment. And enjoy the day. And I hope that COVID has been a bit of a lesson for people that you don't know what's around the corner. So really just live in the moment a bit more, help other people a bit more if you can, and try to communicate more. That's really the important thing.
Live for today, not for tomorrow.
Yeah, I think so.
That kind of old saying.
I think that's a nice one to finish part one on, isn't it? Especially at the last side, Rich. That was nice. I like that.